Ugh. It has been a long, long summer. And not the good kind either. Well, there were some good points. But mostly, well, go back to the first video on this channel, you'll see why. Still, I managed to read 15 books this summer, which, you know, considering I'm a slow reader and everything that's been happening, that's not bad. So I came out of the closet on the 27th of March, and about a month later, I had this kind of jokey thought. Isn't every gay guy supposed to have a copy of Heartstopper on his shelf? It was a joke, alright? But then I thought, you know what, I would actually like to read it. I kind of like the Netflix series, so why not? And earlier this year I did listen to an audiobook of Alice Oseman's Nick and Charlie, which is kind of the end of the story, a novelisation of the end of the story. Nick dies in a motorcycle accident, by the way. It's horrible. It's a really tragic... I'm joking. Nick doesn't die. So I listened to an audiobook of that and I kind of enjoyed it, so I thought, you know what, why not give the graphic novel a go? So I bought Volume 1, which I know this is a tie-in cover and a lot of people don't like this kind of thing, but I actually kind of do because of, well, the film-television connection, how it's kind of more a form of advertising, really. It turns something that pre-existed into a form of advertising. It's more about what it represents, how it connects the two, and I'm waffling. But I bought this, I started reading it, and my little gay heart went pitter patter flutter flutter. This is so beautiful. And so I bought the second volume as well, and then the third, and then the fourth. Because this is the gay romance we need right now. This is the gay love story we all crave. It's so sweet, it's so innocent, and you know what? I want to live in this world, because this world is beautiful. I also read in April, I think, This Winter, which takes place in the middle of Volume 4. That's kind of a short one. It's not as sweet as these, not as sweet as the graphic novels, because it deals with some of the darker themes in there, because there are dark themes in here. And yeah, I enjoyed that as well. Interesting fact, that book appears in the second season of the Netflix show in the background, in a bookshop, which is kind of weird because that takes place after they've been to Paris. So it's kind of like, it's like a prophecy in a way. It's like this weirdly prophetic tome sitting in the background. Just like, if one of the characters picked it up and read it, they'd know what's about to happen. And basically, Alice Oseman, in the TV show, is a prophet writing predictions for the future. Think on that one. I also had to read Solitaire, didn't I, just to finish things off. I was going through a bad patch, so this took me like 2 attempts, but this one doesn't specifically follow Nick and Charlie. This one follows Tori, and yeah, interesting story. I think I did like it, but not as much as like I enjoyed the graphic novels. So, oh, I've bought Loveless as well, so that's for a future read. So moving on from sweet, gay, I want to live in this world to completely horrific, dark, dear God, what the fuck am I reading? Charles Bronson, Broadmoor, My Journey into Hell. Completely the opposite. In the winter of 1979, aged just 27, the inmate who would come to be known as Charlie Bronson was considered uncontrollable by the prison system. Certified insane, he was transferred from Parkhurst Prison to the most infamous high-security psychiatric hospital in England, Broadmoor. There he embarked on a one-man campaign to retain his sanity and to fight against the brutality of a largely hidden regime that relied on enforced drug control. Broadmoor is Bronson's outstandingly honest account, taking the reader back to those dark days. It is a journey filled with sadness, and yet it is one that includes much laughter and pathos, as well as detailing the camaraderie among fellow patients. I wasn't expecting to really get into this as much as I did. I thought, okay, it's going to be interesting. I want to know, like, how truthful it is. I want to know, like, well, it's Charles Bronson. You want to know what he's got to say for himself, really. And at the risk of him calling me up, there is what I detect as a slight touch of... Oh, he does call people up, by the way, when they, like, talk about him on the online and stuff. And he does get in touch with people who criticise him. Not that I'm criticising this book, it's a brilliant book. But there is, like... I detect a tiny touch of narcissism in there. He does come across as a bit I'm right, everyone else is wrong, bit full of himself. I think it is generally a truthful account though. I think it's genuinely an honest account. It's definitely... I'd say it's about a 7 on the Clinton scale of reliability. The Clinton scale, if you don't know, is based on Bill Clinton's autobiography, in which he basically says, I didn't know it was sex, honestly, with Monica Lewinsky sticking my penis in her mouth. I didn't know it was sex, honestly. It's full of stuff like that. It's completely... So this is well above that on the Clinton scale, and you know what? I recommend it as well. Completely different to the Heartstopper series, but I mean, not everything can be light, gay, fluffy and cuddly, as much as we want it to be. Sometimes you need the darkness to balance the light. So speaking of themes of light and dark, God versus the Devil, William Golding, The Spire. I have already filmed a review for this, and wow, I really love Lord of the Flies, his more famous book, and I did try to read this as a teenager, but couldn't get into it. And I can see now why I couldn't, because it's very hard going in places. It's not an easy book to read. It's a very thematic book. It's not very big on plots. Dean Jocelyn has a vision that God has chosen him to erect a great spire on his medieval cathedral. Without foundations, and against the anxious advice of the clergy and masons alike, the spire is built, octagon upon octagon, pinnacle by pinnacle, until its shadow falls darkly upon the world below. It falls most darkly upon the Dean himself. If you enjoyed Lord of the Flies, you're going to enjoy this. This is kind of an opposite in a way. It's dealing with a lot of the same themes, but in a very different way. It's about ambition, it's about misplaced ambition. It's not a happy book. I get the feeling it's based on kind of true events, true stories from when they were building cathedrals in medieval times. And the way the novel builds itself up and up and up and up, like the cathedral spire, and then, not to spoil it, but the way it works, the beautiful poetry of the book, I fell in love with this. This became one of my favourite books. Acts of Service, Lillian Fishman. Where to begin with this one? I signed up to a queer book subscription box, and this was the first book that came through the door. So it's not usually a book that I would pick up and read for myself. It wasn't a bad book. I think it's okay. There's no quotation marks in it. It's very very modernist in the way it's styled. But what's it about? Eve has an adoring girlfriend, an impulsive streak, and a secret fear that she's wasting her brief youth with just one person. One evening she posts some nudes online, which is how she meets Olivia and the charismatic Nathan. Despite Eve's better instincts, the three soon begin a relationship, one that disturbs Eve as much as it enthralls her. Yep, this is about a throuple. Would I recommend it? I mean, if it interests you, I think it is worth taking a look, but it's not one I'd read again. I'm not sure about it. I only finished it a few days ago and I'm still thinking this one over. It's not the worst book I've read this summer, but it's not the best either. Another memoir, one I've wanted to read for absolutely ages, Kim Philby, My Silent War. I took this one really slowly. It took me most of the summer to read this, sort of chapter by chapter, on and off. For anyone interested in 20th century history, in espionage history, this is a must read. It's interesting, and it's interesting to try and work out who this is for. Who is Philby's target audience? Because Philby, defector, MI5 spy, MI6 spy who defected to the Russians in 1963, turned out he'd been spying for them since the 30s. There's not much of his activity for the Russians in here. This is all about MI5 and MI6 and his work during the war and sort of the spy work he did for them. There's very little about the spy work he did for the Russians, apart from one instance called the Volkov case. He also doesn't mention things that were going on in Vienna in the early 30s. It's mostly about the Second World War, and yeah, it's a fascinating book, but again, one I'm still thinking of. one I'm still thinking over, trying to... It's very... It's readable. It's definitely readable. But it's trying to work out which parts are true and which parts aren't, which... I mean, I've seen some reports that this is a complete load of bollocks. But I do get the feeling that bits of this, at least a lot of it, is... Well, I think basically there's a lot of bollocks mixed in with a lot of truth, and trying to sort out which is which. Difficult. And then, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. V.S. Naipaul, Half a Life. I was looking for authors that have won the Nobel Prize in Literature. So I read some Kazuo Ishiguro earlier in the year, and then I found this in a charity shop, and I thought, Nobel Prize winner, let's have a look, let's see how he writes, let's see what it takes to win the Nobel Prize. Turns out, just write a load of shit like this. I enjoyed the first chapter. The first section. There's only like 4 chapters in the book, so... The rest of it, plodding, dull, bit boring. There's uncomfortable stuff in there, stuff that made me uncomfortable to read. Well, stuff about like underage sex and sex with underage girls, which just put me right off this book. My plan was to buy 2 books by every Nobel Prize winner. But to be honest, I don't think I'll be buying or reading any more V.S. Naipaul. Because I really didn't like this one. Really, just no. No. One I don't have with me, Pigeon by Alice Conran. Again, it's a book I enjoyed. Not a book I loved, but I loved the way that it's kind of bilingual. It's about these kids in North Wales. One of them called Pigeon, and the other, I forget her name. I want to say Eve, but I don't think it's Eve. I forget her name. Anyway, they're obsessed with teasing this ice cream man, Glyn. I've forgotten all the names in this book, but they like play jokes and tease this local ice cream man who's a bit of a loner who lives with his mother, and Pigeon has, problems at home with his stepdad. It's kind of it's a story about a rough childhood, about 2 rough childhoods, and the sort of friendship between Pigeon and the girl I'm going to call Eve. And it's about a couple of very dramatic, very dark instances in their childhood which affects them when they grow up. It's bilingual as well. It's English and Welsh in the same book, same tone. And I really like that, because even if you don't speak Welsh, it's perfectly understandable the way it's written, what the Welsh means. And I do like that bilingualism, I do like that about it. Would I read more of Alice Conran's work? Yeah, if I ever come across any, I'll definitely read some more. One that I picked up because I was in the pound shop just getting some food together to go and have a little sort of picnic in the park was M.W. Craven, The Cutting Season. It's a short book, only about 7,500 pages long, about a criminal investigation into a gang. It's a general crime thriller. It's harmless. It was interesting enough. I read about 50 pages in the park and then left it in my bag for about a week and then on my floor for about 2 more weeks before I finished it off. It didn't excite me any great deal, but it wasn't anything bad either. It was alright. It's the best I can say about it. It was alright. Then we have Tell Me How It Ends by Valeria Luiselli. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is a non-fiction book about a lady who went to work for translation for miners going through the US court, miners who'd come across from Mexico. Eye-opening stuff, especially as it was written in 2016, right before Trump became the president. It really opens up this debate, these issues about migrants coming to the United States, especially child migrants, and it discusses the problems in Central America, and it brings up ideas of, how can we help these kids? What can we do to try and, don't build a wall, don't put them in cages. How can we actually get to the roots of this problem? It doesn't pull its punches. It's an interesting book. It's an eye-opening book. And then finally we have Killer in the Kremlin by John Sweeney. A hellish nightmare of a book about Vladimir Putin, his rise to power, and his reign of terror. And I realise I have read a lot of dark, disturbing books this summer. And this may just be the darkest and the most disturbing of all of them. And like the last book, Tell Me How It Ends, this is an eye-opening expose of why the world is the way it is. Why the war is happening in Ukraine. About the appeasement that's been going on for the last 20 years. Dark, disturbing. Pretty much like everything I've read this summer then. Well, not everything. I mean, disturbing on a sexual level. Not that disturbing. Bits of this are worrying. Dark. Very dark. Dark and disturbing. Contains dark elements, but otherwise generally fun to read. Just take me into this world. Take me into Nick and Charlie's world, please. For all the sweet and wholesome vibes Heartstopper has, does make a single guy like me going through issues very sad. And sad because I never had that teenage experience. I never could be open as a teenager. I didn't feel I could be open until, well, this year. Someone called me beautiful not that long ago. No, it was handsome. Okay. Right, mission for autumn. Stop reading so many dark and disturbing books. Deal? Well, you know that queer book box I mentioned? Well, the second book they sent me is called Sedating Elaine. It's exactly what the title says it is. It's about a woman called Elaine who is being sedated by her girlfriend.